Cause sing their hellos. Do, 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 do,
All of our
do.
songs are old.
Oh yeah, everything's old. Like our that's what I was saying about our actors. Oh, hey, there's a new movie coming out. Who's in it? Tom Cruise. All right, we are everything's old.
Oh, you went
We are
live.
we're live, baby.
You went live.
Should I not have gone live? Oh,
All right.
hey everybody. We're a little bit early.
We're a little early.
It's time. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, let me pop out my chat, turn down the volume on YouTube because it's giving me some feedback. What's up, everyone? I
Hey,
am Lee White. I'm here with Will Terry. We are just bantering for a little bit because Jake is coming in a
engaged.
few minutes.
He
Yeah,
has a
he's in
prior engagement that he
prior.
didn't know about that just kind of sprung on him. So he'll be a
Oh,
few minutes late.
it's weird because it says you were in a practice session, start webinar, but
Well,
I
but
do.
you're live on YouTube.
Does it? So it doesn't matter what I do over here, but I need to record it, right?
Yes, but not yet.
Okay, so I'm going to wait on that. All right,
I don't think you record this part.
the banter.
Which means if you don't record it, we can do things that we're embarrassed we did.
I'm going to record it because we can always edit it, and there'll be
Okay, so
some.
so
There'll
did you
be.
start it? Because it
I,
says we're in.
yeah, I started recording.
It
I'm just going
still
to say
says we're in a
start.
practice session though.
I'm going to start it anyway. There we go. I started it. Everything's started.
Oh,
What's up? What's up?
now it says you started the webinar. You guys, we're using Zoom and then we're also streaming on YouTube. So what you got going on here is that we don't really know what we're doing. We're just two guys pretending. And now I'm going to read the chat.
I was gonna show some. I got some new images. I can show you guys a layer breakdown if you want to see how the
Show us a layer breakdown.
layer. What's your layers? I'm gonna show you a
I want you to
process. How about
break
that? Let's show
down
a
the
little bit of that.
layers.
I'm gonna share my screen.
And by the way, hello to everybody. I see South Africa and San Jose. I see Tracy from San Jose, and now Lee took over the screen, so I can't see.
Well, you can look on the chat though. You have the chat
Well,
open,
the
right?
chat's hidden behind your screen now, so I got to move it.
You got to figure out how to operate your stuff.
All
So
right, give us a
these
breakdown.
so these are some different images that I am doing for my new tarot deck. I'll zoom in on these things if they're small on your screen. So I've got 78 cards total to do. I did 22 with my last Kickstarter, and now I'm working my way through the rest of the deck. And so they're super fun because each one has its own. I mean, it's storytelling, the most open kind of storytelling to me. Each one has a theme or a
Mm-hmm.
couple of keywords that kind of go with it, and then I have to figure out what that is going to be, and what symbolism I'm going to use. And so it's just really a fun project. I've really honed in on my palette. I've honed in on my style. So these are taking me now about a day to do each one. Um, and this is the one that I did today. And so I'll
Mm.
show you guys a little bit about. It's not done. I'm
Mm-hmm.
still in the middle of it, but I can show you some stuff. And if anybody has any questions, I can definitely answer some process questions. I do have my layer stack for this one. But I wanted to show you, I don't have my original sketches up, but right before I paint, you can see how loose, like that's the sketch. Oh God, I got too many windows open. That's the sketch that I use to paint something like this.
Mm-hmm.
I do not like locking down on my sketches. To me, it makes me feel like I'm coloring in the lines. Like for people who do really tight sketches, the painting seems so boring. For me, I like to just leave it wide open. I get a general sense of layout, and then I just go straight to painting. I know some. Do you lock down your sketches, Will?
I do.
How tightly? Like it's like locked in, locked in.
I mean, there are times where as you're painting along, you'll realize something needs to be changed or added. So I mean, I can go in and change stuff still. I keep my sketch intact for that
Okay.
reason. But like it's funny because when I first started painting in acrylic, the one of the hardest things for me at that time and for students that I taught later on at university was you lose your drawing, right? When you're working traditionally.
Right.
And once you lose your drawing, you've kind of lost your way. Like you really aren't, I don't think that paintings ever turn out better when you lose your drawing. How, if I say it like that. So learning how to keep it, and I would even draw it back in sometimes if I
Mm.
felt like I was losing it on a painting. But with Photoshop, if you realize, learn how to manipulate the layers, you can always have it. You can always put it on top. You could always have it shining through from transparent layers.
Yeah, I mean that's the
And
best part about Photoshop is that you
yeah.
do get to keep that stuff. For me, I do a really loose sketch like the one I just showed you guys. This one, I don't know where it went, like this one right here.
Hmm.
And then I will do a really loose color study. And so you can see between, let me put this one on the right. I don't know why it always feels like the studies need to be on the left and the finish needs to be on the right, but
Hmm.
but it does feel
What
that
what was with the face tattoo on the one on the left?
way. Here, oh, I just accidentally drew on it. There we
Oh,
go.
okay. I didn't know if I was like if there was some tribal thing going on that one that you got rid of or
No, no. But yeah, so I do just a really rough study like that and just get everything working. I do it really small, typically about this scale on my screen here, no bigger than my hand, basically on my big giant monitor, and just kind of get it working really good. And then I'll go on top of that and do a drawing that's still not very tight, but at least it's enough to where I sort of know what the dresses are doing and what the sort of just the basic, super basic shapes. And then I just, like I said, I go in and start painting. And for me, the big aha moment, let me bring my layers up here. In painting, oh, it won't let me do it. This always happens when you're doing stuff live, right?
but also we have Jake. We can't hear you if you're not in that mic.
Hey, Jake, cannot
Hey,
hear you.
everybody. You hear me
So
okay?
everybody's doing awesome, man. They were missing you though. They were scared you weren't going to be here. I was going to tell them what the big secret was, but now we can just get started, so I don't have to tell them
What's the big secret?
the big painting secret. But we don't have to tell them now. They don't want to know.
Oh,
um, no, the biggest secret that I have discovered is having texture on the inside of a shape, but um, just
Mm,
what's that?
I'm just saying,
Oh,
mm,
oh.
I'll
So
be I'll be quiet.
just a very philosophical. So almost everything that I do is just a lasso, and then you have maybe some kind of textured brush and you just kind of fill it in. If I hide that layer, I mean, hide that selection, that's how almost everything is. So it's kind of clean. And then I roughen up those shapes, but it's all basically, if you look at this image, it's all basically really, really flat shapes, just pasted on top of each other. And then you add a shadow layer. And that's the secret to painting fast. That's how you can do these in a day. I don't know how long our audience, our listeners, how long the paintings take, but for me working, and when I say a day, I mean like half of it I'm out putting on my disc golf basket, I'm eating lunch. It's a loose definition of a day, so probably 5 or 6 hours total to do a
mm.
full painting, and this one's about 80% done. Anyway, that's sort of my secret is paint simple, paint flat, and then add just enough detail to add some dimensionality to it, and you'll be amazed at how fast you'll go.
You
Mm.
guys want to see what I worked on today?
Yeah, man.
Let's ask the audience because maybe they don't.
Some
I was
people,
gonna
well,
say, I was gonna say I agree with the sketch thing in that you lay it out, you lay down the sketch, but for me, I want to have a little bit of exploration in the drawing phase, you
Mhm.
know? So the sketch really is there to keep me, in a sense, staying in my lane. And then I have the freedom in that lane to kind of do what I want to do, if that makes sense.
Turns out they want to see.
Oh, okay. All right. Let me share the
And we
screen.
still haven't started the podcast yet.
This is just the
this,
pre-show.
The
this is
pre-show. Yeah.
pre banter banter.
After this, we'll start the podcast.
If you give me screen sharing, um,
Sharing screen.
share invite Sharon screen into this
You
meeting.
guys, we've named things One thing we've named is Sharon Screen.
And we actually looked up if there was a real Sharon screen, and there was. So that's always,
We
always.
and we get way too much pleasure out of that.
All right. Multiple panelists. There's also drag and drop. Mr. Dragon Drop.
Drag and drop. Yeah. All right. You seeing this?
Sharky.
Yes, this is a shark robot. I'm putting together my robots book, like getting down to the last little few pages as I get it ready for the printer. And I realized as I was going through, I was like, you know what this book needs? It needs a shark robot. This wasn't in the plan. This was like literally came up with it last night. And so this morning I was like, let's do it. So I just want to show you where it started and how it ended up. Hold on. So here's my initial sketch. You could see pretty loose. Um, there's a little bit of just kind of putting everything in their place. And then I'll go in, I'll lighten that up about 50%. And then, whoop, and then I'm gonna do a finer line over it. So let me show you. There we go. That's a little bit better to see. So now
Mhm.
you can see I'm getting in there and doing a little bit more detail in places and kind of dialing it in. And then we're gonna do the ink line work.
That's cool.
And
Yeah.
that's where you tighten it down. Yeah.
That's where I tighten it down. And then once that ink line work is in place, then it's just a matter of laying in flat color.
Flat
Which
color. See,
yep.
even with a different style, it
So I
works for
lay
any
in
style.
I'll lay in one like base color,
Hmm.
and then I'll put in like I'll break up the different shapes into their individual sections.
So
And
they're
then
the local color, basically.
I
Hmm.
add my texture to it. Two levels of texture. So one is like a grease level, like a dirty, greasy level, and then one's like a bent and scratch texture level. And then I'll go in and I'll add little like decals, you know. If you ever put together a model, like a model airplane, it comes with like the decals. This is all I'm doing. You put you put together the plastic model, and then you add the paint, and then you add the textures and everything. And then once that's done, then it's just a matter of light and shadows. So I go in and I add one layer of shadows, another layer of shadows, another layer of shadows. You could kind of see the difference between these two. Like
Hmm.
this is a little bit medium shadows, darker shadows, and like a fill. And then I'll go in and add the light, two layers of light. And then what do we got here? And then, yeah, a little bit of effects and like the little glow in the eye right there.
Boom.
And we've got ourselves a Robo Shark.
Robo Shark. Do 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 do.
Robo Shark, dude.
I got a surprise for you guys. I've got a special a present for Will and Jake on our 200th episode. I finally unmounted my camera from my desk so it's not going to shake on the next
Yay.
200
What?
podcasts.
I never thought I'd see the day.
That's it.
I can
That's it. That's
type, I can
perfection.
move my mouse. Nothing's going to shake
What
anymore.
is it mounted to?
Oh, I can't show you because it's holding itself up. But it's
Okay.
I got a basically a boom arm.
That's awesome.
I,
Was
I,
this Anthony's doing? Did he talk you into this?
No, I was bored one day and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna stop the shake. I see Will shaking over
well,
there.
I got a new mount for my camera.
See? Earthquake in Phoenix happening
Yeah.
right now.
Yep.
Okay.
That's amazing. All
Should we
right. So before we start this episode, let's just talk about so we've got 150 people here. We love you guys. We appreciate you guys joining us. If you have, we're going to take your questions live today. So this is your chance to like get a point blank question and answer from us instead of having to email it and then wait 3 months for us to finally get to your question.
on an episode
So
that you missed.
yeah. So what we're gonna do, yeah, what we're gonna do is if you have a question, type in all caps question. That way we can go through the chat and see it really easy. And then we'll start taking them. Does that sound good?
Let's do it.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay.
If can I do a money tip while we wait for some questions to come in?
Yeah. So let's do the intro. We'll do the Lee's money tip. And how about before the money tip, let's just talk about what we've learned in the past 100 episodes.
Oh my gosh.
Since the first 200. Is there anything, I mean, what you learned about podcasting? How about that?
That might take a little while.
I learned to get a boom arm so your camera doesn't shake. That's
Okay,
number
that's
one.
good. That's good. What we'll try it. We'll try it. I don't even know what I'm gonna say.
Okay.
We're freewheeling, everyone.
Okay. Here you guys go. Like I said I did a little like announcement video just telling people join us tonight, and I was like, you get to see the messy sloppy mess that this is behind the scenes, how these things get made. Okay, here we go. Hello everybody, welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm Will Terry, and all three of us are professional illustrators. We've all worked for all the major publishers in the business. Together, we've published somewhere around 75 children's books, and we've all taught illustration at university art programs.
That is correct. Each week, we come at you guys with awesome listener questions or fantastic illustrator interviews. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we argue, but each time you learn something brand spanking new.
Brand spanking new, that's right. And this is our 200th episode. Technically, it might be 202 or something like that, but we're celebrating 200. We're celebrating 200 tonight. And this is a live streaming. So if you're hearing this later, we're bringing in people's questions live through our YouTube live stream. And if you want to see the unedited version of this, I'm sure that live stream is still up there somewhere. But first, we've done 200 episodes of podcasts. Do you remember when we first started podcasting? Back in 2018, I think it was. What do you recall from that first year of podcasting?
We did a little more teaching. I mean, it seemed like they were more organized podcasts in terms
we
of
were
subject
better
matter.
back then. Yeah.
But at a certain point, we kept getting so many questions that became more interesting. Because each week it would be like, okay, Will, you're going to prepare something. And Will would be like, I don't know what to do. Okay, we'll do this. And we'd pick a topic and it would turn out to be interesting. We'd fill a whole hour.
Well, and then we remember when we had like a list of topics that lasted like 6 months or a year. We had that.
Yep.
But here's the thing. We had been doing stuff for years before the podcast. We'd been doing Third Thursday and something else. I can't remember.
Right. Well, we had just been teaching together.
Yeah. So we were used to basically doing this.
Yeah.
But
so I think it was like an easy fit for us to talk together for an hour because we were already doing that every day anyway.
Yimming says that first episode was kind of awkward.
Samantha said I had more numbered lists back then, but Jake was the master of the lists. I mean, I've had a few lists, but Jake's lists, I have a list of Jake's lists.
You know what's funny is that I want to say like the big thing in that first year though, behind the scenes for you guys, for the listeners, was how much technical difficulties we had to wade through to get this podcast out. It was every time it was something new, like, oh, my microphone's not working. I get it to work. Lee's wouldn't be working. We get his to work. And we're in it, 45 minutes before we even like started recording.
And we had terrible equipment too.
Terrible equipment. So I think it's funny that a lot of people out there have heard those episodes sooner than we have. Like it's been more recent since they've listened to them than we have. I'm just going through. We're getting a lot of questions coming in. So do you want to do
I don't have to. If we got enough questions.
There's tons of questions. I say we get to that.
I think so.
We'll save your money tip for tomorrow.
This one was going to save people thousands of dollars, but it's all right.
The only good thing about you giving your money tip is that it lets everybody sue you for giving financial advice.
Yeah, that's all you got to do. All right. So I've been copying and pasting them into our personal chat on Zoom. So
I
if you
wondered
want
where
to,
that was coming from.
yeah. So if you
Boom.
want to
Look
look
at
at
that.
those, you can kind of go through there and then we'll go from there. Does that sound good?
Let's do it.
All right. First question. I'm new to the podcast. How long have you guys known each other?
10, at least 10 years now,
At least.
over 10 years.
Can I give a really quick summary of that story?
Mhm.
I'll make it quick.
Because there's also how did you guys meet?
I wanted to teach a class with Jake because I met him in it's a long story, so I'm not going to go into that part, but I really thought that you were a cool dude.
Mm-hmm.
And I was
Advice.
like, I think we could have fun teaching a class together. I was kind of getting burned out teaching at the university that I was working at. And so we started teaching a children's book class together. It went really well. And then we were like, hey, let's do more of this. So we started doing more. And then it was like a couple years later, I think it was
Mm-hmm.
18 months, 2 years, 2.5 years later, we get this email from Lee. I get it and you get it. And I
Mm-hmm.
ignored it because I was busy at the time.
Don't put baby in a corner.
And Jake's like, hey, did you get that email from Lee White? And I'm like, yeah, but I didn't read it. So I looked at it and lo and behold, I looked him up. He was basically like, hey guys, I want to teach and I think it'd be cool to teach with you. I can do it on my own, but I think it'd be cool to do it with you guys because you guys are already going, you know? And I
Yeah.
looked at his images and I'm like, oh, I know who this is. That I've been teaching with this guy's images in my class at university for years and as good examples of how to illustrate. And so we were very intrigued, and that's pretty much the start of how we met.
Yeah,
Pretty
and
much.
for me, I dove in. We started chatting, and just so happens that there was something with SCBWI where we were doing a review of a bunch of artists, and they invited me. I can't even remember what that was, but they invited me on to do the crits with them, and we haven't done anything at that point. And we got along then on that first one the same way we get along right now. I mean,
Yeah.
it was no different. And so we
Right.
just dove right in. And then I was like,
Yeah.
well, we need a Photoshop brushes class. I'll teach that. And all of a sudden I started making videos and we were sort of off to the races.
But we like, I like Jake working with Jake because his style was very different than mine, and we liked Lee because his style was different from both of ours. And we were like, oh, his style really hits the more looser, textury, arty, primitive look.
Hack.
Jake is more technical drawing, animation. I don't know what mine is, but it's something different than those two. And so
Mm-hmm.
it just kind of really worked. We felt like it would work really well together.
Yeah.
Will's a master of light and shadow. Lee's a master of like pattern and shape. And I'm a master of line and whatever.
Yeah. We
line.
cover all the bases, but something we talk about, little learning moment, something we talk about in the class we're teaching, all three of us are teaching together right now, Self-Publishing Pro. We talk about minimal viable, what's the last thing?
Product.
Yeah, minimum viable product.
Product. There we go. And that is basically the smallest version of something you can do and make it. And we did not start our first podcast knowing we were going to get to 200. We didn't start our making video classes knowing we were going to have a 23 class curriculum with like 100 classes. We
Mhm.
just made the one thing, and then we made the next thing, and then we made the next thing. And it wasn't a big plan in the beginning, but the point is to just start moving forward and make things and then build on that thing that you made. And you'd be surprised. I mean, I never thought we would do this much stuff over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yep.
really is.
Okay. We got to answer them quicker.
Yeah. Okay. Bologna Book Fair is soon. Are you still three open to get there one day and sleep in a cheap place if anyone was crazy enough to pay the trip for you?
100%.
Yes.
If somebody wants to book I will go. When is it? Tomorrow? I will leave tomorrow.
I sleep
Yes.
really good on an air mattress, believe it or not.
You
Yeah,
do?
man.
Yeah.
All of us love to travel. We travel a lot, all of the three of us individually. And we had a lot of fun when we were all together. So 100% yes to that question.
Someone said, I saw this online. Someone said air mattress is really great if you love the feeling of sleeping on the floor, but not right away.
That's awesome.
There's some truth to that.
Yeah. All right, next question. What do we got here? Going through these. Amanda says, I want to hear stories that keep up artists. How has your art that keep artists up or keep us artists? I'm sorry, I'm not reading that correctly. How has your art positively impacted the world? All three of your answers, please. What keeps you as an artist? I'd love to know. Yeah, that's a good question. How has your art positively impacted the world?
Oh, it's a tough question to think that, that big of a scale. What I like to think of it as is a much smaller scale is how how do I stay interested in it and make things that I think are compelling? And I always think that if I'm going to think something's an interesting image or an interesting story, I think somebody else will too.
That's
And I
it.
hope that
Yeah.
travels, far and wide. But if I'm not happy with the project, I don't care how many other people are going to be happy with it, because it really, I mean, it's not just a full selfish thing, but you really want to just dive in. And the storytelling, I think, I mean, I kind of speak for all three of us here. The
Mhm.
storytelling is the thing. And that's what's so fun about doing picture books. And that's what's so
Mhm.
fun about making these tarot images and all this stuff is you just got to figure out, how do I say this thing in the best possible way for what I'm trying to communicate? And that communication, when you
Yeah.
nail it, it feels really good.
Yeah.
I subscribe to that, the Rick Rubin kind of thing. He's been speaking lately about that, and his thing. He's if you don't know who he is, he's a music producer of many famous bands, and he basically says you can't think about your audience. You have to think about the project and doing the best you can possibly do on that project to satisfy yourself and your own aesthetics. Kind of, it's the same thing you said, Lee. I'm just repackaging it.
Yeah, Rick Rubin says it a lot better than
Yeah.
I do.
And better than I do too. But basically it's you make for yourself, and there's a tribe of yous out there that will love it. And it's just a matter of finding them. And to them, the thing that you made is just is improving their life, is making their life better. And so you don't have to set out to make someone's life better. You just set out to make art, actual art, which is will change people emotionally because you're emotionally invested.
I think
And
you guys, though, are giving yourselves short shrift because, like last week, you weren't on the interview with Sam Cotterill, Lee, but she held up a board game that her kids grew up playing, and it was illustrated by Will Terry. And she's like, "This is like a
No
part of our
way.
family's culture, right? Like this is something. This is iconic in our home." And I guarantee with the children's books that you've done, Lee, there are homes where your art was a part of like a person learning how to read, like
yeah,
a
Well,
skill that's
like I
gonna
said, I hope so. I hope that's happening.
absolutely, I think
yeah,
it is. And I know for me too, I don't know if you guys get these emails, but every once in a while I'll get an email of someone who's now in their 20s and they read one of my books when they were a kid and they're like, you're the reason I want to be an illustrator, or you're the reason I love, comic books or something like that. Um, and so, you know, I think you absolutely are, you two are impacting people's lives one person at a time. And what is impacting the world if you're not impacting people one at a time?
Yeah,
yeah.
good answer.
Okay.
You too, Jake, by the way.
Thank you.
And you also.
And I think we double answered like what keeps you going as an artist, and I think that's it too, just
Yeah.
knowing. Okay, here's a question from Jenny Beth Jones. My drawing is stalled out completely. I can't break out any ideas.
Oh man, got a million ideas.
Let's hear them.
Oh, let me start. Where do
Master
we start?
copies is
One
one.
one thing we used to start with, well, master copies is great, is just to get the pen, pencil, paintbrush, whatever the medium is, moving. And so find somebody who just does it for you, who's like, oh my gosh, I wish I could paint and I draw like that. And start copying them. It's so much fun to do anyway. But aside from that, we, us three, me, Will, and Jake, used to talk about the creative bank account quite a bit. We haven't really been bringing it up over the past 2 years or whatever, for whatever reason, but
Mhm.
we can go back to it. And that is just a reserve that you have, like going out, seeing things, input instead of output. And because you can't just keep outputting things without having something coming in, the world coming in, stories coming in, are there art coming in, music coming in, poetry coming in. Then you interpret that and you change that, and then it comes out through you. And that's how you break out. I going back to the idea that somebody was talking about earlier with lists. For me, at the beginning of every sketchbook, I don't just start drawing a picture. I create lists of things that I'm interested in. At one point, it was fire hydrants. If you ever go around and look at fire hydrants, they're super interesting. But if you travel to like New York, some of these older cities, the fire hydrants are all different and they're all awesome, and street covers and things like that. So I did a whole sketchbook just of fire hydrants. It's just whatever you're interested in will get the pen moving. And that's the way to do it, is think about what you're interested in, fill your creative, your creative bank account, and then see what comes out.
Yep. And then I've got another idea too. Um, it, I find that just mixing up the art tools, if you're really accustomed to doing one thing, put that thing away if it's boring you, if you're stalling, and get out something different and try making marks. Just make marks with it and then try making art with it. And it will start to like excite you a little bit and liven you up. And I want to show you something really quick here. I was kind of in that spot too, where I was just like, I don't know what to draw in my sketchbook. I don't know. And so I thought, well, what if I do something I don't normally do? And that's just kind of draw with like pick three colors and just draw, instead of like robots or what I usually do, subject matter, vehicles and whatnot, like just do like old school, like mascot designs, or old school, like cartoon characters from like the 30s, right? And so this is what this sketchbook has turned out to be. It's like, how can I take these three colors, and make a character using those three colors? And then what that turned into was, I was looking at Lee's stuff and some other art, and I was like, what if we got rid of line work altogether and just did markers? And so then I started doing stuff like this guy on a
I
bicycle.
love that.
That's
Oh, all of
my
a sudden, Lee's perked up.
Yeah,
Oh,
Lee's
that's
like,
now,
wait a
now,
minute.
now you're finally making interesting work.
Yeah.
Hey, can I give a shout? That's awesome, Jake. That's amazing. I
Yeah.
want to give a shout out to Anthony Wheeler, who just came out with a sort of exquisite corpse type game where
Yeah.
it's you sort of draw cars. It could be cards. It could be like a pineapple, Dracula,
Hmm.
superhero, and you got to somehow combine those three things. I want to see somebody by the end of the podcast combine those three things. But it's unexpected groupings, and then that can shake the rust off a little bit too.
Yeah.
Let me just weigh in on this just really quick. One of the things I noticed from student sketchbooks is that I'd see students that have like basically drawn the same character through their whole sketchbook. Have you guys ever seen that?
And it's all
Mhm.
heads.
Yeah, it's all the same. And so what's happening is this people that are doing that are kind of they're staying in their comfort zone, and they're just drawing because it's fun to draw. So they're drawing a little variation on that character this way, or
Mhm.
basically it's all the same stuff. And like I don't know the person that asked this question if that's their problem. That's what I kind of see is getting stuck, is kind of doing the same thing. Assignments. And so what you're talking about, Lee, is one way with like random word generators or actual illustration assignments, like give yourself something that you have to solve. And what's going to happen is it's going to be hard because it's not what you've been drawing. And you'll break out of that if you force yourself to do things you're not comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
That's where growth is. Growth is not in what comes naturally. Growth is not what is fun or easy. It's solving problems that are tough.
That's right.
And that's why we want you guys entering the contests that we do monthly based on a prompt or a word or a little snippet of a sentence or something, because it's hard. It's not just draw whatever you want to.
Right, right. And that's where we've seen a lot of growth in some of the artists who've been doing critique arena and now how to fix your art, is they're
Mhm.
coming out and they're doing stuff that is completely out of the comfort zone. The prompt I made for last month was Griffin. How many of you had drawn a Griffin before that? It's not an easy animal to draw.
No.
So here's a question. Has your I think the answer is obvious, but has your preference or perspective for working independently versus working through publishers changed since you started the podcast? I don't know. Has it, guys?
It's once you make something for yourself, it is very, very hard to go back and
Yeah.
make something for someone else. It
Yeah.
just is.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's something that we've been talking about lately. We launched Self-Publishing Pro because we do believe in self-publishing so much. Me personally, there is a place for publishing for you as sort of like a benchmark and a goal as a creator, because not everybody gets rich getting published. Some people can make a living at it. Some people, it is still almost just like a hobby that you're getting paid for, but it's not your full-time living, right? And so there's this whole spectrum of people who are absolutely millionaires because they cracked the code on publishing. And that's like the 1%. And then you have this long tail of everybody between I'm making $100,000 a year uh, doing publishing all the way to I've gotten an advance for $10,000 and I'll probably not make royalties on it, right? And so the thing though is once you get published, you do have like an air of credibility because an agent liked your stuff enough to spend their time representing you. An editor liked your stuff enough to take it to their board of um, acquisitions and say,
Mhm.
this is a book I really believe in, and we should put our money into publishing it. A publisher forked over in advance and said, you're worth us paying out this money. The marketing team says, okay, we're backing this book and we're going to market it as much as we can with the budget that we have, right? And then you have, the librarians, the book reviewers, everybody down the line who sees what the publishers are doing and deciding, is this a good book or is this a bad book, right? And so that's a lot of group of people that are not your mom and dad or your like your core group around you that are cheering you on. These are people who really objectively are telling you that you're good enough to be published. And I think there's value in that, but I kind of feel like the the path to actually making a more substantial living from your work can be, I want to choose my words carefully here. I think self-publishing is an option, just as valid option at being a way for you to be able to make money off of your writing and your
Mhm.
illustrating and whatnot. And so that's why we're so pro that. And I've always been a self-publisher and I've always done it like on my own along with publishing. And so I feel like the two kind of can go hand in hand. But don't cast any shade on people who are like, I don't want to ever self-publish. And
Mhm.
also the people that are like, I never want to work with a publisher,
Right.
because I think I've seen success in both of those realms as well.
And
Hey,
both
can
are
I
hard. They both have their pros and cons. That's for sure. Self-publishing is not easy.
Right.
can
Right.
I throw a question in here that kind of dovetails with this?
Yeah,
It's down
absolutely.
the list a little bit, but it's PMX is basically saying, how did you guys become comfortable with inconsistent income from being an illustrator? And I just want to say that I have the worst background of the three of us, and
Mhm.
that's intentional because I bought a small house with cash because we
Mhm.
we downsized. We were able to downsize from a regular size house to a really small home and a really small studio, and I didn't want to pay extra money for storage. I can easily afford a storage unit and have a really nice background.
Mhm.
What my goal is now is to put as much money away into my retirement as I can. And so my values went from like we could afford a lot more than we afford, but we've kept our expenses really low so that we can, like Dave Ramsey says, live like no one else so you can live like no one else,
Mhm.
right? Later on. And that's a big part of working freelance is you have to spend a lot less than you make. Um, and by so doing, you can more easily pick and choose the projects you want. In the beginning, I didn't do that. I spent more than we made. I live by the Lion Decker credo. Look that up on Google. the Leyendecker Credo, and I had to take a lot of assignments that I didn't want to take just because we needed the money so bad, right? So I lived on one extreme. Now I'm living on the other extreme.
Yeah.
Well, let me add to that too, is that I won't say my income is inconsistent in terms of how much it is. I will say it's inconsistent on where it comes from. And what I mean by that is, and all three of us are sort of the same. I may be teaching a class, doing two children's books, doing a self-publishing thing, remodeling my house, all
Mhm.
at the same time, and doing art fairs. And so the second that one of those things starts to slip a little bit, I pick up the other area. I'll teach another class, or I'll put out some more prints, or I'll apply for another art show. And all of us have gotten really good at, for lack of a better term, hustling. And
Mhm.
that's what it is. And every single successful illustrator, I don't know anybody who's just doing the one thing. And I know me and Jake have talked about the book, The One Thing, and deep work and all
Mm.
that stuff. It's just not the way that it works for most of us. I think there's the Dan Santats of the world, and even he is still just producing so much. His just happens to be all publishing. But
Mhm.
for other people, they just have all these balls in the air,
Yeah.
and they can divert when one ball drops. They'll just pick up another ball over here,
Mhm.
and that's how you navigate it. So my income sort of stays the same, but where I get it from changes.
Yeah. I want to say too, though, like sometimes I feel like bad that I'm not my income hasn't been more consistent. And I'm like, man, this was a hard year. I was counting on a book deal and a book deal didn't come through. Or I was counting on a Kickstarter to make X amount and it only made 20% of that or 60% of that, right? And so sometimes it is a feast or famine type of situation. And you have to be careful, have stuff in savings so that when you need it, you can access it, and you have to dial things up and dial things down. But I know for a lot of people, it's not necessarily the art career that can be fluctuating like this. Like I have a friend who's a lawyer and he's struggled, right? There's times where he hasn't been able to make as much money as he could make for whatever reason. I have a friend who's a doctor and his practice that he was a part of got bought out by a bigger, more national practice, and they decided to cut wages for everybody. So now he has to, he's essentially making less money than he was before for the same amount of work. I have a friend who's an orthodontist, and I'm thinking, orthodontist, that's got to be a great job. And he's like, how do you get people to, like, how do you market yourself? I'm looking for ideas because I got to get more people to come in and get their teeth done here. Right. And so what I realize is like everybody outside of people showing up 9 to 5 to like just a regular day job are having to do some kind of hustle grind balance of making sure that they're um, just sort of balancing making sure that enough work is coming in and they have enough time spending on it going out. And it's not, I don't think, a problem just exclusive to the art career as well. So essentially, everybody has some sort of hard thing that they have to do in order to provide. And I think part of it's the economy right now too. It's been really rough for a lot of people. So anyway,
Mhm.
um, next question. Did uh did any of you guys ever do an activity book? Have you guys ever done an activity book like color books, sticker
I
books, stuff
did.
like that?
I did one, but it's upstairs. That it was a klutz book. You know those klutz books that they have on the rack,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a castle. The book was a castle that you put together.
That's
So you
cool.
when you end, you have a castle.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was fun.
I haven't had much experience in the activity book realm, but we should probably look for a an artist who's done that, an illustrator who's done that, and interview them because that is it's a an area of illustration that absolutely exists, and it'd be
Yeah.
cool to talk to someone who's
I
decent.
I
I had
wonder
the
why I
offer.
don't.
Go ahead,
Oh, go
Will.
ahead.
I was going to say last year I had the offer. I don't know if you guys remember, of like a craft company had contacted me, and they were going to use some of my illustrations for people who do like beads. You guys remember that? It was going to be sold
Mhm.
at Michael's. but they wanted to give me such a low percentage that I ended up never contacting them. We went back and forth a couple of times, and I never got back to them.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
It was funny. I mean, it's kind of
Yeah.
cool. Like the end product, I can't remember what
Yeah.
it was, but it was like beads or something like that, and they used my image as a template or whatever. But I didn't end up doing it.
hmm I asked the guys at Klutz, like, you know, because I had a blast doing it, and I'm like, hey, do you have any others? And I never, they would like, no, we don't have anything right now. And I check back every now and then, nothing. So I don't know if they liked it
Hmm.
or if that was the only project that came through that they thought my work would be good for, and they were looking for another one. I have no idea.
Hmm.
This is one of the problems that we live under, right? As illustrators, is sometimes we have no idea how close we got to getting a job,
Right.
how it was received, really, like, because they'll tell you, oh, it was great, everybody loved it, but like, what were they saying behind the scenes? You know, like, oh, we'll never hire that guy again, or something. You
Right.
know, who knows? You never know.
All right. Next question.
Um, so there are a couple of questions here about, we're not going to be able to get to all of them. So I'm just kind of picking ones that I know we haven't dug too deep into in past episodes. Like there's a question about agents, and we have full episodes about agents. So if you have an agent question, go look up those episodes because I think we've hit it from almost every different angle, the agent
I've
question.
got more. I
Mhm.
need to do a whole agent show. I just parted ways with another agent. I've had five. So if you guys have
Mhm.
seen Spinal Tap, it's like the drummer. Like I just keep going through going through the agents.
Did one of
But
them die in a bizarre gardening accident?
You know, have you ever met someone who's like been divorced 8 times or 5 times?
maybe it's me. That's what I'm starting to think. Maybe it's me.
Lee is a wild stallion. He was never meant to be bridled like that.
I tell you, I have only a few lists of requirements from agents, and when they don't hit them, I start firing.
Okay, Cyberyak and Brant are asking about doing art festivals. Brant specifically wants to know if we're going to do art festival or Comic-Con Pro, like a course like that. That's something
We've
we've been
talked about
talking
it.
about.
Yeah.
Talking
It's a
about it.
great idea. Sort of the plan that we were talking about with SVS is, we've got the Pro Series courses coming out, and those are sort of full genre based, like doing children's books or
Yeah.
self-publishing, like big ideas. And then we have this idea of doing these basically an expert series of classes, and that I think the art fair one would fall under that,
Mhm.
where it's a smaller thing, maybe 4 or 5 weeks, and it dives into one specific topic that is not necessarily a genre, but
Start to
just a
finish, but
specific
basically like
thing.
how to get prepared for your
Mhm.
first show,
Right.
how to
All the
get prepared
stuff.
financially as tax wise, as well as
Mhm.
how to get a good booth spot.
Yeah. And so
The
Selling
that's a
sales
good
techniques.
suggestion.
yeah.
That would be
Yeah.
a good one, I think.
What would uh what would you, just for Cyberyak, he says, any advice for someone attempting to do this for the first time? What would be your general advice for that?
Doing what
So
for the first time?
Going to an art festival, trying to get
Oh,
into an art festival, I guess. Like
go
what
low,
would be your
go
tip for?
local.
Hmm.
So one is go local, go for Artist Alley to save money,
Hmm.
and by like you've got to have a plan to create a brand.
Hmm.
So the big mistake that most people make is they throw out all the stuff they've ever done, the best stuff they've done, and their booth looks like a yard sale.
Hmm.
So the first step is actually go walk the floor and pretend, and ask questions of people that are doing it. Like, how's it going? Like, I'm thinking about doing this. Let them know you're not a customer. You're a fellow illustrator. You're thinking
Yeah.
about doing this. Is it costing you a lot to be here? Do you think that you're going to make your money back? What do you think you're doing right? What's working? What's not working? Stuff like that.
yeah, take a lot of notes, and then just be willing to learn. Your first one isn't a failure if you didn't sell a bunch.
Yeah.
Your first couple is really just to get your feet wet, be there, learn, and then you'll start to figure it out. I mean,
And
everybody's going to have a different experience. That's the hard part about art fairs, and like you could sell, all weekend and have the record year or record show, and the person next to you had the worst show they've ever had.
mhm.
So you
and
really
most
need to figure it out.
I think my number one most important thing is try to identify the booths that you're afraid to go to because the artist there is wigging you out. And the reason they're wigging you out is because they're so desperate to make a sale that you're afraid to go over there because they're so desperate to make a sale, right? So
Mhm.
identify what they're doing wrong versus the booths that you go to that you feel comfortable at.
Yep.
Yeah. Here's a question on this is from the Doodler's Guide. How do you convince yourself that your book project is worth carving out time for? I often feel like it's too much fun to take seriously, haha, and I end up giving other things a priority. Yeah, I I uh I really think that you have to be enjoying it on some level. You have to be excited about the possibility. Oftentimes, the reason I go through the pain of making a book is because I'm really motivated about having that finished product in my hand. And I can't basically sleep until I know that thing's finished because I'm so excited to have it. And this started from like a very young age where I would cut out paper, do illustrations on them, tape them together, and like make a book. And that would be like my afternoon project, right? And that turned into trying to get a book finished as quickly as possible, photocopying it, stapling it, and having like a little zine made in a day or 2 days, right? And then now I'm much more comfortable spending 3 or 4 months on it because I want that finished thing. So I think envisioning the finished thing, is it something that you'd be so excited to have? Then absolutely do it. And then the other thing is you got to sort of, I think, test the water with the idea too. So if it's a children's book, pitch the idea to somebody, and see what they think, or do the minimum viable product of it, and that's just do the one illustration that encapsulates. So if it's where the wild things are, draw, doing the wild rumpus. Hey, do you want to see this? Do you want to know more about this? And if people are interested, maybe you should spend a little more time on that. What do you guys think?
What's the question again?
I was
How do
reading
you
the
know if you
chat.
should spend time on something?
Well, I mean,
Oh,
I think going back to the question, it's a really interesting way they phrased it because they phrased it like they want to eat the ice cream, but they don't. They feel like they should be eating the broccoli,
Yeah, yeah.
which is interesting to me because what I look this career is all dessert. That's the beauty of it. If we follow our passion, you should be excited to get up in the morning. You should be excited to make the project. And if that's the feeling you have and you feel guilty about it, you just got to get rid of the guilt because that is telling you which direction to go and you're just
hmm.
denying it.
Hmm.
You'll have plenty of clients that give you broccoli
That's
that
right.
you
It'll be all broccoli.
choose to turn down or take, usually based on do you need the money. So sometimes when you need to do the money, yep, you're eating broccoli.
They're saying, please do a course on designing and illustrating book covers. That is one of our expert series that we were talking about doing because we
Yeah.
already had a full class with that, and now we're going to condense it and change it, and that's one that may be coming up.
I'm going to tease a little something here. We have finalized an outline for Graphic Novel Pro.
Graphic novel,
That
bro.
that's coming down the line. Here's a cool question from Perplexity. What is the most valuable focus/skill for a professional artist in the industry looking to set out on their own?
Mm,
Most valuable skill or focus. What do you guys think?
good storytelling.
What was that
Oh,
question? I was reading.
yeah. What's the most valuable skill for an artist setting out on their own in the industry?
I think being able to tell a good visual story, and
I agree. I agree with that. Not just a
not with
good
putting
one,
words in your
not just a good
illustration.
one, but an interesting one. And we've noticed
Yeah.
that in the contests a lot, where somebody can tell a story, but it's not an interesting story. And
Yeah,
all of a sudden we're
good
like, why
caveat.
are you drawing that?
Yeah, like there's a illustrators are, if you're going to be a children's book illustrator and that's or graphic novel, there's a certain part of you that's maybe a small bit of comedian in there too, right? Where there's like
Mm.
there's some kind of punchline or else you're, if it's not funny, you're telling some kind of an emotional story. Insert your favorite author who tells emotional stories, but like you're telling them visually, and a lot of people struggle with trying to tell that story, so they put signs with words in there that the concept relies on. We're not talking about that. We're talking about like think of Norman Rockwell. Go look at Norman Rockwell's visual stories, right? Look at his
Mhm.
paintings, and you'll and if you had to write you could look at one of his paintings and you could write a paragraph of the story that it's telling.
Hmm.
How many of your paintings could someone sit down and write exactly what the story is without relying again on signs with words on them and things like that,
Hmm.
and have them be interesting, not just like you said, Lee, not just the story, but why do I
The,
care?
the other thing, and it's related to storytelling, is being entrepreneurial. Because this is in many ways, being an artist is pretty cutthroat. And by that, I don't mean artists are like out to get each other, but it's a very competitive field. And because so many people want to do it, and so many people are good at it. And the thing that kind of sets you apart from other people is um, your storytelling ability. Can you connect with an audience, whether it's visually or through words or something like that? But then also, can you reach an audience?
Mhm.
And that's just as important. And in order to do that, you've got to understand marketing. You've got to understand, the difference between red ocean strategy and blue ocean strategy, right? You've got to understand minimum viable product. You've got to understand, like, networking. That's a huge part of this as well. And so just core business fundamentals, often, like I tell people, um, if you're going to take art classes, take some business classes to go along with that. Maybe even get an MBA along and, and along with it. I have a friend of mine who works in animation for Nickelodeon, and he minored in business, and he was an assistant of mine, and 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 then eventually we did a little business together for a year. We were business partners for a year, and he was like so on the ball and so easy to work with because he understood that whole business side of it. He's a great artist too. And so I think that's really what is going to kind of set you apart moving forward in the next 10, 20 years of your career.
Mhm.
Well, somebody was asking there in the questions, in the future, could putting your head down, making picture books, uploading to Amazon with no Facebook, no social media, no marketing at all whatsoever, would that work over time? Basically, profit through sheer prolific quantity? And the
Can
answer to
I
that is a resounding, in my opinion, no.
let me
Mm.
let me give a more nuance than that. Okay.
We just talked to Samantha Cotterill, who has no social media presence.
Different thing though. She's got an agent and she
So
already achieved to a certain
Mhm.
level. And the one asterisk that goes with the no is if you are really, really, really good, you will have work.
Yeah.
so
If,
let, let, let me say this. If you're committed and you're doing what we said, you're making books that you love that are art, you're going to have to be really good at marketing them as well on Amazon to make that work. Okay. So you're going to have to spend probably as much time taking Amazon marketing classes, right, and learning their system. The easier way to make it on Amazon, unfortunately, is competing where everyone else is in keywords and basically making content for specific keywords and subject matter that people are searching. So you're letting searches lead your art, which to me is the wrong way to go about making stuff. And there's tons of people out there using AI to help them make both stories and art going in that direction. So I kind of agree with Lee that it's a no. However, if you're really good at marketing, you could make it work. Especially if you were writing really good stories that that um that people who know story, like librarians, fell in love with, you could do really well. You could be a breakout, but it's going to be hard. And you have to be good
it's
at
like the
marketing.
lottery. You would be the exception to the rule if you broke out.
But see, I hate saying no, just a flat no, because there are people with those kinds of skills who could really do well in
Well,
that.
again, the highest echelon of art, and if you, I mean, if you're a standout artist, you're going to get work almost no matter what you do, as long as
Right.
people can see it
That's a good
somewhere.
point. That's a really good point. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. You have to really you either you have to be selling yourself or other people have to be selling you. And the only way other people sell you is if they, if you've actually blown them away and knocked their socks off, right?
Right. And this is one of the things we're going through in our self-publishing class is one of the sections is all the different ways to market your book. And there's many, and you can't do them all. You know,
Yeah.
you have to pick and choose which ones seem to fit your personality the best or what you're going to like doing more than other things and go for that, you know.
One of my best friends is an architect. We grew up together, and we would always draw and stuff together.
Mhm.
And he chose architecture. I chose animation illustration. And today he texted me. He's all, "Hey, have you seen this thing, the 1,000 True Fans idea?" I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah. That's a, I
It's like
that
15 years old now.
it's 15 years old now. I didn't say that, but I was like, this is what sort of guided me into leaving animation to being an independent career person. And if you haven't heard it really briefly, is that if you have 1,000 true fans who are willing to pay $100 to you every year, you make $100 worth of product for them to buy, then if you do the math easy, that's $100,000 per year, and that's a middle class lifestyle in the United States, right?
Mhm.
And he was talking to me, and he's like, "Well, I think as an architect, all you really need is 25 to 50 true fans." He's like, "If I could just do 50 houses before I retire, I'll be set. Like that'll be done." And that's what he does, is he designs like
Mhm.
high-end homes for
Mm.
really wealthy people. And then I think architects, I think the deal is they make 10% of the entire budget of the house is what
Mm.
they take home. So if he's doing $1 million home, he gets 100,000, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so then we got to talking more. I'm like, yeah, and if you are into publishing, sometimes you only need 5 to 10 people at a publisher to be your true fan. If
Right.
they really back your book and they like it, and your agent's really good with them, you can keep getting book deals. And obviously there's if a
As long as
publisher,
they're able to sell it and find you
yeah,
fans.
yeah.
Right.
But
Yeah.
really the ones in charge of giving you work are the ones at the publisher, right?
Right.
And then and then it dawned on me too. I'm like, and if you're Michelangelo, you just need the Medicis to be your true fan, and
Yeah.
then you're set, right? So going back to this original question is um uh exactly that. Like, you have to be really good, and I think quantity is no good if it's crap. It doesn't matter if you put out 100,000 drawings that are horrible.
Right.
You have to have quality to be able
I
to
think
get
I
out
think
there.
that's the quality is something we talk about all this other stuff outside of the actual work, the quality of the work. But something that I've noticed, that I went to school, I went to art center, and I went to school with a lot of talented people. And some people are going to be put off by this statement. Some people are going to be stoked about it, depending on where you are in your career. But I think I'm excited about it because what happens in the art world tends to follow a pattern, at least that I've seen. And I like patterns because then you can predict where you're going to fall on that.
Mm-hmm.
So I graduated from school, and like I said, I went to school with some really talented people. The
Mhm.
people that I would consider, everybody got A's in art school. So I can't say the people that got A's, everybody got an A, but the people who really deserve the A plus is a couple of them: Robert Kondo, Chris Applehans, Kang Lee, Dan Santant, Peter Brown. Those are the five that, in my opinion, were A level students. And if you ask them, hey, is being an artist hard? Not really. I mean, Robert Kondo got picked up at a Pixar right out of Art Center. Was it hard to get a job for him? Not at all. Chris Applehans just directed the that Dragon Wish movie
Mm-hmm.
on Netflix last year. Was it hard for him to get a job? Nope. Kang Lee designed his own game right out of school with a bunch of investors. Was it hard for him? No. So the A people don't have any problem with this. They don't have any problem marketing. They don't have any problems at all. They're fantastic. Dan wins the Caldecott. Peter Brown's movie's coming out next week. So then you go down to the B level students. Those are the people that are getting jobs, but they're having to hustle a little bit. They have to have a good agent. They have to be on top of it a little bit, but they tend to get the work. And then the true C level students, which is where I would put myself, really have to work hard to put yourself in all this, in all these spots and do the marketing and do the advertising and all that stuff. So the quality of work really is the predicator of how much work you're going to have to do on the side. Would you guys agree with that? I mean, I haven't
Yeah,
really quantified that before.
the people listening just realized they're getting their advice from the C-listers.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I did not have it as easy as those guys do, but I think their natural talent level was higher than mine.
Yeah. I've always felt that way too about mine. There were always people that had it that easier. I've always had to work harder.
They were better artists than me. I sure couldn't deny it. But I've seen that play out over time. Is like this: the better the work, the more easily it sort of gets passed around. The more art directors are sharing it, the less work the artist actually has to do. So
Mhm.
the step one is be really good. And
Mm,
that's what we talked about in the self-publishing pro is like you can follow every step that we give in the entire class, but if your actual product isn't interesting, it's none of the rest of it's going to work.
right.
Yeah.
You know something that I just want to throw in there tonight
Let's hear it.
that kind of goes along with what we're talking about is for 3 projects in the past, I have hired marketing people, individuals or teams to run Facebook ads for me,
Hmm.
and some with better success than others. But I've never known if I'm uh if I'm if it's profitable. Like I've known it's profitable on a few of them, but on some I definitely lost a lot of money. But I've never known if I'm getting a good deal, if I'm getting hustled with the people that I'm hiring, right?
Hmm.
So I'm actually going through a class right now that you guys know about that's helping me in the back end of the business meta or the meta business suite.
Hmm.
And it is killing independent will. Like it is literally like it's killing me because it
I
doesn't
love it.
jive with my personality at
And
all.
you signed up for it, so you know you have to like go
I
through it.
signed up for it, I paid for it, and I'm going through it. I'm forcing myself through it. I'm like begging the TAs basically to help me get through it because I want to know how to do it myself.
Yeah.
I want this information.
Yeah.
So you guys, I want you to know like you can always learn more things and I want to be able to teach it too. I want to be able
Hmm.
to help other people learn like if they can do it, but it is so complicated for me because it's
Yeah.
just like I'd rather be making art, but I really want to sell the stuff that I make and so I want to learn this thing. So I'm working on that right now. And I don't know if that fits in here somewhere, but
That's good. It's like The Secret of Happiness, that Will Smith movie, right?
yeah,
Like if you
the
want
pursuit.
something really bad, you're gonna figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
And I think the theme of that, and I'm seeing it in Will, is that you can pretty much learn anything if you it's so cliche, but if you just put your mind to it,
Yeah.
like if you just
Yep.
try it and work on it. Because I really have seen the change in Will too. Like
There's a bunch of people that have referenced the Seinfeld that I was referencing, so they
yeah,
got that.
like independent.
It's the summer of Will.
Yeah. No, that's good. Um, Let me see here. This is a question from Nathan. What's your sources of inspiration? Like Jake's Shark Bot. Where do you go for that kind of an idea? And that goes back to what Lee was talking about at the beginning here, the creative bank account. Um, and I have the equation. I came up with like the universal equation for creativity, and it's C equals what is it? Creativity equals accountability times skill times okay, I haven't memorized it yet. Accountability, skill, and um shoot, what's the third thing? I totally forgot it. Anyways, I'll probably come out as I explain it, but essentially creativity is connecting dots, right?
Hmm.
and and the more dots that you have of all different kinds of things, the better connections you can make. So
Hmm.
you remember those drawings where it was the dot picture and they have a number, and if you just follow the line, put them together, and you make a picture. And you see when you see one that has like 100 dots on it, you're like, ooh, I wonder what that's going to be, right? And it's a more complex, interesting thing. Well, I think that's creativity. It's collecting all these different dots, and the person with the most dots that they've collected has a better chance of connecting things that haven't been connected before. So like shark meets robot, right?
Mhm.
I love sharks. I love robots. So it's like an obvious combination, right? So what's one thing you love? Lee loves disc golf, but he also loves like cats, right? So he's gonna do, if he did like a disc golf cat image with a little bicycle, man riding on the
In
back
a
of it.
hot air balloon.
Yeah, no, balloon, right? Like it's taking these experiences that you've had, and putting these dots in your creative bank account, and then when you need to make an acquisition of something, you go retrieve the dots and you put them together, and
Mhm.
that's really all it is if you're short on ideas, go live a life, go experience some things.
Well, I think, if you can remember what that third thing is while you're doing that, my little equation is take a standard story and then come up with a creative solution for the story. And that gets you so far. And I'll give you two examples of that for two dummies that I put together. I haven't made them into full books yet. But one of them was I was talking to my son about nightlight. And he was young at that point, 3 or 4 years old. And he had a nightlight. And we were just talking about it. I think one of them, the cat broke one of them, speaking of cats. And so we were going to get a new nightlight. That was the whole thing. And we were talking about different nightlights. And we came up I just started asking him questions about what kind of nightlight that he wanted. And somehow we got to talking about the moon being a nightlight but he couldn't have the moon as a nightlight because the moon would move outside the scope of the window and then it wouldn't come in the window. And I was like, well, what if we could bring it in the window? And then all of a sudden
Mhm.
that started an entire picture book of a boy who
Mhm.
pulls the moon down. Um, and one that I just wrote was again another one sort of about bedtime stuff. As my kid woke up, he can't remember all of a dream, but he can remember part of a dream. So I came up with these little monsters that at night they're eating parts of your dream. And if you wake up or shift or whatever, then they got to scurry away so they don't get the whole dream. And so, just basically taking really basic things, why does this thing happen or why does that thing happen? And then just making up a wildly, inventive story about how to answer that. Easy.
Mhm. Yeah, I remembered what the equation is. So it's C equals A plus C plus S, and it's accountability, constraints, and skill. Okay.
Mm.
And an artist who has skill and accountability but has no constraints will ultimately fail to deliver something meaningful. An artist with accountability and constraints but no skill will fail to deliver something beautiful. And an artist with skill and constraints but no accountability will fail to deliver anything at all. And so it
Mm.
takes all three of those things to make something creative happen.
I like it. It's a good little formula.
Yeah. Okay, let's see here. You sort of answered Leah's question too, which was, do you have any suggestions for how to come up with stories? I mean, it's the same thing, right?
Mhm.
How do we choose guests for the podcast?
We
So,
pick the people who will come on our podcast.
yes. No, we haven't had
That's about it.
anybody turn us down. Uh, oh, we had
But
one
how do we
person turn us
pick?
down.
How do we pick them?
Yeah, so sometimes it's just somebody that we know that we're like, oh, we got to have
Mhm.
them on. So like Travis Hansen was a friend of Will's.
Right.
Brant Woods was somebody I met in person.
What
I
about David Bedricki? He's still a friend of mine.
He's coming on soon. I just have to get that organized. I knew you were going to say that. It's going to happen
We had
for sure.
Pascal on. We had Peter Brown on. We've had a ton of
Yeah.
people.
So I think here's the thing. We've had a few people on where some people are better than others as far as conversations. And our goal with guests is to give you access to people that you wouldn't normally hear from.
Mhm.
So if it's somebody who's been on every podcast before, we're less interested in listening to them unless we can, have them talk about things they haven't already talked about.
Mhm.
So if we were to bring on like a Dan Santat or something who's been on several podcasts, I'd really love to pick his brain about, you know, something that he hasn't really delved into.
Yeah, the worst interview we could ever do is, oh, how do you make images? And then they say, oh, at first I start with sketches and then I do the painting.
Right.
Right.
That's what
We
everybody
we
does.
actually did one. We did one like that with a really big shot artist who's very famous, extremely famous, and it just went to me, it went so poorly because he was not in a charitable teaching mode. He was more in a look at me. And
Hmm.
this was not on three. This was not on
This
3PP.
predated 3 Point Perspective.
Predated 3PP. So it's not anybody that's on. But I was like, what a missed opportunity.
Hmm.
We spent an hour saying how good I am. We know he's good. Everybody knows he's good.
Yeah.
So that wasn't
But
helpful.
I think we could, I would love to get on a few people who aren't artists, but who we could benefit from their wisdom. I've reached out to this one particular author and haven't gotten past his, like, he's got a press agent or like a speaking agent. And they're like, you're too small for this guy. But I'll get him one day. I'll get him one
Mm.
day.
Jim's asking who would our dream guest be? We almost had my dream guest on. I think it would be an interesting guest, and that's Mary Grand Prix, because
Mhm.
she's interesting to me because A, I like her work anyway, but
Mhm.
B, she had one of the wildest things ever happen to her in how huge Harry Potter went. I mean, she was a well-known illustrator before that,
Yeah.
but she wasn't a household name really,
Mhm.
and that just blew her up. And then after Harry Potter, she started just doing abstract paintings. I think she still does some book work, but not much. But she's doing these abstract paintings that are almost like I don't even know how to describe them. There's like color field
Yeah.
studies and
Mhm.
stuff. They're just it's way different than Harry Potter. And I don't know if that's a byproduct of did she get paid enough to where now she can just paint whatever she wants to, or did
Well,
she have a career shift that she doesn't want to do
and her
that stuff
husband
anymore?
teach her husband teaches at Ringling as well. So
I didn't
yeah,
know
I
that.
don't know.
Yeah.
Like, but I know she got paid well on Harry Potter, but
I'd
she was
love
also
to
frustrated by the art direction on those Harry Potter book covers too. So
See, once
I'd love to
even with Harry Potter,
you want to know my list?
yeah.
Dream, absolute dream. Bill Watterson, Calvin and Hobbes. That's not going to happen. I'd love to talk to Gary Larson,
mm,
who did Far Side. I'd love
Hmm.
to talk to Jim Davis, who's the man behind Garfield, right? I'd love to talk to Mary Englebright. You guys
mm,
know her?
yeah.
I don't know her.
She she's still pretty big, but was
Hmm.
huge in like the 90s and early 2000s
Yeah.
in the like greeting card, like gift world. You've seen her stuff for sure, but she's got a really cool style of like girls with flowers and things like that. And then non-artist people, this guy right here, I want him.
Cal Newport, yeah.
I want him bad. And and I'm thinking anyone else. It would be cool to get like like a famous like director who's really good with like art direction. So like you know, like what was the guy that did The Creator? Did you see that movie? He also directed Rogue One.
Was it good?
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
It was cool. Yeah, what was his name? Anyways, but he's like he's got an artist background, like James Cameron too. He's an artist, he's an illustrator, but he just happened to be better at making movies. But if he wasn't so good at making movies, he would have been like one of these top tier concept artists, right?
Hmm.
So I think that would be cool.
Sean Tan would be great.
Nope. Yeah, Sean Tan would be cool too. Um,
Hey,
all right.
Eric's asking if we could have him on the podcast.
Sean Tan.
No, Eric.
Oh,
Eric
Eric,
Castleman. He might be good.
let's talk about it. Have your people call my people. All right, should we wrap it up?
Yeah.
Let's
Okay.
wrap.
You guys,
Jake, you
thank you.
have to end it with a wrap. You can't just go out like that.
Okay.
Wait,
Okay.
wait, wait. I have one last question
Mm-mm.
from Emily. This is from Emily.
Okay.
You guys missed it.
All right.
Will you ever be finished creating? Is I'm paraphrasing hers, but like, will the three of us ever have felt like we've done enough projects so that we're just done creating and we're just going to sail off into the sunset with all the huge bags of gold that we've collected and
It's
No.
funny.
Bitcoin?
It's not a very sexy answer, but I don't consider illustration is just one method of creating. And if I gave up illustration, it wouldn't make me sad because other things that I do is sort of the same part of my brain.
You
Like even when
scratch
I'm
that itch.
remodeling a house or working with like woodworking or
Mhm.
other things like that. It all seems like part of the same world to me. So I don't ever see that going away. Even skateboarding or snowboarding, all part of the same
Yeah,
thing.
I'm the same way. My love for creating predated making money from it.
Hmm.
Um, and it only makes money now because it just happens to work out that way. But and even some days it doesn't make me any money, but I still show up and do it. So this is just it's what I do. It's
Yeah.
like creators create.
Yeah. That's me. I don't see myself ever stopping until they're shoveling dirt on me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is for Pamela. I believe the children
Oh
are the
no. How do
future.
I mute him?
Treat them
How do I
well
mute
and
him?
let them lead the way.
Where's the mute button? No, I'm gonna take us out. I'll spare you guys the rap. I'll spare you the rap.
Thanks for all the questions we didn't get to also, you guys.
Thank you. And thank you so much for just being with us on this journey. We love having you guys around for all this. So 3 Point Perspective is made possible by SVS Learner. Becoming a Great Illustrator starts. Your hosts are Lee White, Jake Parker, and Will Terry. SVS is made possible, or this podcast is also made possible by the help of our team. We just want to give a special thanks to our producer, Daniel Tu. That's Daniel TU. Special thanks to our keeper of curriculum, Austin Shirtliff, our show notes wrangler, Lily Howell, our chief operations officer, Lisa Fott, and our illustrator, Annalise Black. Now, go draw something. We're done.
All right.
I'm gonna. Oh,
Is
these are
everybody still here?
turning it
Yeah,
off.
everybody's still here.
Is everybody still here? We should have our SVS meeting now.
I know.
Just some banter. I should add before we stop recording that because the people that hear this later won't know that the Whitney Houston song was a request. I didn't just break into song randomly.
No, you said this is for who, Patricia or
But
Patty?
Pamela, but I didn't say
Pamela.
that she is asking for
She was.
it.
Lee's just randomly singing to people in the chat.